The stars had never seemed so cold to Captain Lee Dae-ho as they did that morning. He stood on the bridge of the indomitable Spirit, watching the endless black through the main screen. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he kept holding the cup anyway. It gave his hands something to do while his mind wandered. The ship was 3 weeks into a routine patrol of the outer rim. Nothing exciting ever happened out here, just empty space, dead rocks, and the occasional comet. Lee preferred it that way. After 20 years in the Space Navy, he had seen enough excitement to last 3 lifetimes. "Captain," called Lieutenant Kim Hyun-woo from his station. "I'm picking up something strange." Lee set down his cup and walked over. Kim was young, maybe 25, with sharp eyes and steady hands. He was good at his job, which made Lee pay attention when something worried him. "What kind of strange?" Lee asked. Kim frowned at his screen. "It's a signal, sir, but not like anything I've heard before." "It's beautiful." Lee raised an eyebrow. In 30 years of space travel, no one had ever called a distress signal beautiful. "Put it through the speakers." The bridge filled with sound unlike anything Lee had ever heard. It started low, like wind through crystal caves, then rose higher and higher until it seemed to touch something deep in his chest. The melody was sad and desperate, but also somehow hopeful. It made him think of his daughter's lullabies and his grandmother's prayers all at once. "Where is it coming from?" Lee asked. "Kepler 442b, Kim said. "That's the Villani homeworld, about 6 light years from here." Dr. Park So-min looked up from her research station. She was the ship's expert on alien life, a small woman with kind eyes and a mind like a steel trap. "Captain, the Villani communicate through harmonic frequencies. If they're broadcasting this far, something terrible must be happening." Lee nodded. "Can you translate it?" Park worked at her console for several minutes. The beautiful, haunting song continued to fill the bridge. Finally, Park looked up with pale face. "It's a distress call," she said quietly. "They're saying their sun is dying. Radiation is killing their world. They have maybe 72 hours before their planet becomes uninhabitable. They're asking for help to evacuate 2.3 million people." The bridge fell silent except for the alien song. Lee felt something cold settle in his stomach. 2.3 million people. Even the biggest ships in the human fleet could only carry 50,000 in an emergency. "Have other ships received this signal?" Lee asked. Kim checked his instruments. "Yes, sir. It's broadcasting on all frequencies. Every spacefaring race in this sector would have heard it by now." Lee waited. In situations like this, the Galactic Council usually responded within hours. The big civilizations had massive ships and advanced technology. Surely someone was already on their way. Hours passed. The beautiful, desperate song continued. Lee found himself unable to leave the bridge. Something about the melody held him there like invisible chains around his heart. "Any response from the council?" he asked Kim for the 10th time. "Nothing yet, sir." Dr. Park had been working non-stop, learning more about the Villani signal. "Captain," she said, "I've been monitoring galactic communications. The Zephyrian Empire received the signal 4 hours ago. They ran calculations and decided it would cost too much to mount a rescue. What about the consortium of worlds? They're still debating who has jurisdiction over Villani space. The meeting has been going on for 6 hours. Lee felt anger building in his chest. While bureaucrats argued and accountants counted costs, an entire civilization was dying. "The Ethereals?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Park shook her head. "They consider the Villani too primitive to be worth saving." The alien song seemed to grow sadder, more desperate. Lee closed his eyes and listened. He could almost see them. Millions of beings looking up at their burning sky, singing their hearts out to the stars, hoping someone, anyone, would hear and care enough to help. "Sir?" Kim said softly. "We're the closest ship. At maximum warp, we could reach them in 60 hours. That only gives us 12 hours to evacuate 2.3 million people," Lee said. "Yes, sir." Lee looked around his bridge. His crew was small, only 43 people on the whole ship. They had one cargo bay that could hold maybe 50,000 people if they packed them in like sardines. The math was simple and brutal. They could save 50,000 and watch 2.25 million die, or they could do nothing and let them all die. But the song kept playing, and something in that melody spoke to a part of Lee that had nothing to do with math or logic or practical thinking. It spoke to the part of him that had joined the Navy to help people. The part that remembered being a scared kid himself once, hoping someone would come help when the world seemed to be ending. "Dr. Park," he said, What do you know about Villani biology? They're crystalline-based life forms, very fragile but highly intelligent. They've never known war or violence. Their whole civilization is built around harmony and cooperation. Could they survive in our cargo bay? Park thought for a moment. If we modified the atmosphere and temperature controls, maybe. But Captain, even if we save 50,000, I know the math, Lee cut her off. But we're not leaving anyone behind. The bridge crew stared at him. Chief Engineer Choi Min-ho, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward. Captain, Choi said, with respect, sir, there's no way our ship can hold 2.3 million people. Lee turned to face his crew. They were good people, all of them. They had families back home, lives they wanted to return to. He had no right to ask them to attempt something impossible. You're right, he said. It can't be done. No ship could do it. But we're going to try anyway. He paused, listening to the alien song that continued to fill the bridge. Because 70 years ago, when the Krith invaded Earth, we sent out a distress call too. And the Altarians came. They didn't have enough ships either, but they came anyway. They saved as many as they could, and they fought beside us until we could save ourselves. He looked at each crew member in turn. The universe is full of people who will tell you why something can't be done. But it's empty of people who will try anyway. We're going to be the ones who try. Kim was the first to nod, then Park, then Choi. One by one, the entire bridge crew agreed. Set course for Kepler 442b, Lee ordered. Maximum warp. And send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we're attempting a rescue operation. As the ship jumped to warp speed, the alien song grew fainter but never stopped. Somewhere ahead of them, 2.3 million beings were singing their hope to the stars, and only humans were coming to answer. The indomitable spirit dropped out of warp at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge, watching the main screen as their destination came into view. What he saw made his heart sink. Kepler 442b hung in space like a dying jewel. The planet's surface, once covered in beautiful crystal cities, now glowed with an angry red light. Solar flares from the unstable star bathed the world in deadly radiation. Even from this distance, Lee could see the atmospheric storms raging across the continents. Radiation levels? He asked. Lethal, reported Dr. Nam Ji-won, the ship's medical officer. Any unshielded life form down there has maybe 10 hours before cellular breakdown begins. Time to planetary surface? Lieutenant Kim Hyun-woo checked his navigation console. 4 hours at full impulse, sir. 4 hours to get there, maybe 6 hours to work before the radiation killed everyone. Lee had seen impossible odds before, but this was beyond impossible. This was insane. Captain, Dr. Park So-min called from her station. I'm receiving multiple transmissions from the surface. The Villani are trying to coordinate evacuation efforts, but they're in complete panic. Lee could hear it in the background. The harmonious song that had called them here was breaking apart into discord. Fear and chaos were destroying the beautiful music. Put me through to their leadership, Lee said. Park worked her controls. I'm not sure they have organized leadership right now, sir. Their entire social structure is based on consensus and harmony. This level of crisis is something they've never experienced. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Lee was looking at beings unlike any he had ever seen. The Villani looked like people made of living crystal, their bodies transparent and glowing with soft inner light. But these Villani were flickering, their light dim and unstable. Some were cracked, literally breaking apart from stress. This is Captain Lee Dae-ho of the human starship Indomitable Spirit, he said. We received your distress call. We're here to help. The lead Villani's form stabilized slightly. When it spoke, its voice was like crystal bells. Human, you came? But the Council of Worlds, the great empires, they're not coming, Lee said simply. We are. How many people do you need evacuated? 2.3 million souls remain on the surface. Our ships were destroyed in the first solar storms. We have no way off-world. Lee closed his eyes for a moment. 2.3 million. His ship could barely hold 50,000 in emergency conditions. We'll get you all out, he said. I need to speak with your engineers and scientists. We have 6 hours to figure out how to do the impossible. The Villani leader's form brightened slightly. You truly mean to save us all? Every last one, Lee promised. Chief Engineer Choi Min-ho stepped up beside Lee. Captain, with respect, we need to talk. Lee nodded to the Villani. Stand by. We'll contact you in 30 minutes with a plan. The transmission ended and Choi turned to face Lee. Sir, I've run every calculation I can think of, Our cargo bay can hold maybe 60,000 Volani if we pack them tight. There's no way to fit 2.3 million people on this ship. Then we make the ship bigger, Lee said. That's not how physics works, Captain. Dr. Park looked up from her console. Actually, it might be. I've been studying Volani technology. They don't use metal and plastic like we do. Their ships, their buildings, everything is grown from crystal matrices, and these matrices can be compressed, folded, expanded. Choi frowned. You're saying we could use their technology to expand our cargo space? I'm saying we could turn our entire ship into one giant life support system. Strip out everything non-essential, convert every room, every corridor, use Volani crystal technology to create compression chambers. Dr. Nam looked up from her medical station. What about life support? Oxygen, food, waste processing? The Volani don't breathe oxygen, Park said. They absorb energy directly from crystalline structures. If we could put them into some kind of hibernation state, they wouldn't need much life support at all. Lee felt a spark of hope. How do we put 2.3 million crystal people to sleep? I'd need to study their biology more, but from what I can tell, Volani consciousness is based on harmonic resonance. If we could find the right frequency, do it, Lee ordered. Choi, I want you working with their engineers on expanding our storage capacity. Park, figure out the hibernation system. Nam, work out what medical support they'll need. Sir, Ensign Yoon Tae-young spoke up from his position at the communications console. What about the rest of the crew? If we convert the entire ship, we'll manage, Lee said. Everyone, you have 6 hours to work miracles. Let's get started. The next few hours were the most intense of Lee's career. The ship became a hive of activity, as his crew worked with desperate Volani scientists to create something that had never been attempted before. Choi and his engineering team stripped out furniture, recreational facilities, even personal quarters. Working with Volani crystal growers, they began installing compression matrices throughout the ship. The technology was unlike anything humans had seen. Crystals that could fold space, creating pockets of compressed reality. Dr. Park worked with Volani biologists to understand their hibernation requirements. She discovered that Volani could enter a deep sleep state if their harmonic frequencies were properly modulated. The challenge was creating a system that could maintain the right resonance for millions of beings. Simultaneously, Dr. Nam faced the biggest challenge of all, figuring out how to treat an alien. Physiology she barely understood. Volani biology was based on energy flows rather than chemical processes. Their version of illness was disharmony. Their healing required perfect resonance. Captain, Park called out after 4 hours of frantic work, I think we have something. The Volani can link their consciousness together in hibernation. If we arrange them in networks, each group can help sustain the others. How many per network? Lee asked. About 10,000. We'd need 230 network hubs throughout the ship. Choi looked up from his crystal matrices. I can give you 230 spaces, but it'll mean tearing out the navigation deflectors, half the weapons systems, and most of the crew quarters. Do it, Lee said without hesitation. As the work continued, more problems emerged. The ship's power systems couldn't handle the load. The structural integrity was compromised by removing so many internal bulkheads. The navigation computer couldn't calculate properly with all the mass redistributed. But somehow, impossibly, solutions kept appearing. Volani engineers showed them how to use crystal matrices as both storage and power distribution. Human ingenuity found ways to reroute critical systems through the converted spaces. With 1 hour remaining, the first groups of Volani began boarding the ship. Lee watched through the cargo bay monitors as thousands of crystal beings flowed aboard like living light. They moved quickly but gracefully, each group finding their assigned network hub. Captain, Dr. Park reported. The first hibernation network is online. 10,000 Volani are entering stasis. Life signs, Dr. Nam asked. Stable. Their energy patterns are actually stronger in the network than individually. Lee allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe this could actually work. Sir, Kim called from his jury-rigged navigation station. I'm reading massive solar activity. The next flare will hit the planet in 45 minutes. Lee looked at the boarding status. They had taken on maybe 200,000 Volani so far. 2.1 million still waited on the surface. How much faster can we load them? He asked. Choi checked his systems. We're already at maximum. The crystal matrices need time to stabilize each network before we can add the next group. Lee stared at the numbers. They were going to run out of time. Captain, Ensign Yoon said quietly. Signal from the surface. The Villani are asking if they should stop sending people up. They want to save whoever they can. Lee looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had worked miracles, but miracles had limits. No, he said finally. Tell them to keep sending everyone. We'll find a way. Sir, Choi began. We'll find a way, Lee repeated, his voice carrying the absolute certainty of a man who refused to accept defeat. Because that's what humans do. The next solar flare hit Kepler 442b like the fist of an angry god. Captain Lee Dae-ho watched from the bridge as the planet's surface erupted in radiation storms. The beautiful crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years began to crack and shatter under the assault. Radiation levels on the surface? He asked. Dr. Nam Ji-won didn't look up from her console. Lethal to all known life forms. Anyone still down there has maybe 2 hours before cellular breakdown. Lee checked the boarding status. 800,000 Villani were now safely in hibernation aboard the Indomitable Spirit. That left 1.5 million still on the planet's surface. How many more can we take? He asked Chief Engineer Choi Min-ho. Choi wiped sweat from his forehead. The man had been working for 12 hours straight, modifying ship systems with technology he barely understood. I've converted everything I can, Captain. The galley, the gym, even the waste processing plant. We might be able to fit another 200,000 if we compromise life support in the crew quarters. Do it. Sir, that means the crew will have to share quarters with the hibernation networks. One wrong frequency adjustment and we could all be knocked unconscious. Then we better not make any wrong adjustments, Lee said. Communications Officer Shin Hye-jin looked up from her station. She had been learning to speak in Villani harmonic frequencies, a skill that required her to sing rather than talk. Captain, I'm receiving priority signals from other ships in the system. Other ships? Lee frowned. They were supposed to be alone out here. Zephyrian Empire vessels, sir. 3 heavy cruisers just dropped out of warp at the system's edge. Lee felt his stomach drop. The Zephyrians were known for their strict adherence to galactic law. If they were here, it wasn't to help. Put them through, he ordered. The main screen flickered, showing the bridge of a massive Zephyrian warship. The alien captain looked like a giant mantis wearing a military uniform. Its compound eyes reflected no emotion as it spoke. Human vessel, this is Admiral Zekai of the Zephyrian Empire. You are in violation of Galactic Council Emergency Protocol 47. You are attempting a rescue operation without proper authorization and with inadequate resources. You will cease this operation immediately and withdraw from Villani space. Lee felt anger burn in his chest. Admiral, there are 1.5 million people dying down there. We're trying to save them. Your attempt is futile and dangerous. When your ship fails, the debris will contaminate this system. The Empire cannot allow this. The Empire had the chance to help and chose not to, Lee shot back. We're not stopping. The Zephyrian's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Captain, your ship is designed to carry 500 crew members in normal operations. You currently have 800,000 aliens aboard. Your structural integrity is compromised, your life support is failing, and your power systems are operating at 400% of design capacity. You have perhaps 6 hours before total system failure. Lee glanced at Choi, who nodded grimly. The alien was right about everything. Then we have 6 hours to finish the job, Lee said. Before the Zephyrian could respond, another voice cut into the transmission. This is Dr. Veltar of the Consortium Medical Service. We've been monitoring this rescue attempt with great interest. A new image appeared on screen, a tall, thin alien with silver skin and large black eyes. Captain Lee, what you're attempting violates every principle of safe rescue operations. It's completely illogical. Thank you for the assessment, Lee said dryly. However, the doctor continued, we've brought medical supplies and temporary life support systems. If you're determined to kill yourselves trying to save these people, we'll at least make sure you have the proper equipment. Lee blinked in surprise. You're here to help? We're here to observe, the doctor corrected. But if medical supplies happen to float away from our ships and accidentally end up in your cargo bays, well, space is a dangerous place. Equipment goes missing. Admiral Zekai's mandibles clicked angrily. This is highly irregular. So is watching 2.3 million people die when we have the technology to save them. Dr. Veltar replied smoothly. More ships began appearing on the edge of the system. A consortium science vessel, claiming to be studying human behavioral patterns under extreme stress. An ethereal observer ship, officially present to document the failure of inferior species. Even a few civilian traders, ostensibly checking the system for salvage rights. But as the hours passed, a pattern emerged. The consortium ships began broadcasting navigation hazard warnings that were actually detailed technical specifications for life support improvements. The ethereal observers transmitted philosophical treatises on futility that contained mathematical formulas for structural reinforcement. Even some of the civilian traders accidentally jettisoned cargo containers full of useful supplies. "Captain," Dr. Park Somian reported, "the incoming data is incredible. These alien races are secretly helping us without officially helping us. They're maintaining political deniability while providing technical support." Lee smiled grimly. "They want to see if it can be done, but they can't be seen trying to do it themselves." "Sir," Ensign Yoon Tae-young called out. "Message from the surface. The Villani evacuation coordinator wants to speak with you." The screen showed a Villani whose crystal form was cracked and dim. "Captain Lee, we have gathered all remaining survivors in the last functional city. 1.2 million souls, but the city's shields are failing. We have maybe 90 minutes before the radiation kills everyone." Lee looked at his status boards. They had taken aboard 1.1 million Villani so far. The ship was groaning under the strain, systems failing faster than his crew could repair them. Taking another 1.2 million was impossible. "We'll get them all," he promised. "Captain," Choi began. "All of them," Lee repeated firmly. Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo, the ship's Marine commander, stepped forward. "Sir, request permission to strip down the shuttle bay. We can convert it to emergency hibernation space. That's our only way off the ship if something goes wrong," Dr. Nam pointed out. "Something's already gone wrong," Oh replied. "We're way past the point of having backup plans," Lee nodded. "Do it, strip everything non-essential. I want every cubic meter of this ship converted to life support." The crew worked with desperate efficiency. They tore out wall panels, rerouted power conduits through floors and ceilings, and converted the ship's computers to operate on backup processors. The indomitable Spirit stopped being a starship and became something else entirely. A massive life support system held together by human stubbornness and alien crystal technology. "Captain," Shin reported, "the Villani are asking about transportation. The last shuttles were destroyed in the radiation storms." Lee looked at the readouts. The planet's surface was now completely uninhabitable. The only way to get the remaining Villani off-world was to bring the ship down to them. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," he ordered. The bridge fell silent. Taking a ship this size and this overloaded into a planet's atmosphere was suicidal under normal circumstances. Doing it while the planet was being bombarded by solar radiation was beyond suicidal. "Sir," Kim said quietly, "the ship won't survive re-entry in its current condition. The structural modifications we've made, they're not designed for atmospheric stress." "Then we'll have to be very, very careful," Lee said. "Take us down, Mr. Kim, and try not to break us on the way." As the indomitable Spirit began its descent into Kepler 442b's atmosphere, every alien ship in the system turned their sensors toward the planet. Some came to witness a heroic rescue. Others came to watch a spectacular failure. None of them looked away. The ship shuddered as it hit the outer atmosphere. Hull plates began to buckle under stresses they were never designed to handle. Emergency alarms blared throughout the vessel as systems failed in cascade. But somehow, impossibly, the ship held together. Human engineering and Villani crystal technology proved stronger than the sum of their parts. The indomitable Spirit descended through the radiation-soaked atmosphere like a falling star, carrying the hopes of 1.1 million sleeping refugees and the desperate prayers of 1.2 million more who waited below. "Approaching the surface," Kim reported, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Final approach," Lee ordered. "Let's bring them home." The indomitable Spirit lifted off from Kepler 442b, with 2.3 million Villani aboard, and barely enough structural integrity to hold itself together. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on what remained of his bridge, watching the dying planet fall away behind them. Every system on the ship was screaming warnings, but they had done it. Every single Villani was safely aboard. "Status report," Lee said, though he almost didn't want to hear the answer. Chief Engineer Choi Min-ho looked up from his jury-rigged console. His face was pale with exhaustion. "Sir, we have major hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. Life support is operating at 15% of normal capacity. The warp core is running so hot that we're one power spike away from a complete meltdown. Navigation systems? Lee asked Lieutenant Kim Hyun-woo. Damaged in the atmospheric entry. I can get us to warp, but I can't promise where we'll end up when we drop out. Dr. Nam Ji-won looked up from her medical station. Captain, the Villani hibernation networks are stable for now, but they're drawing more power than we have. We need to reach a safe planet within 48 hours or we'll start losing them. Lee nodded grimly. 48 hours to find a habitable world with a damaged navigation system and a ship that was falling apart around them. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was beyond anything in his experience. Set course for the nearest human colony, he ordered. New Harmony is our best option. Sir, Kim said hesitantly, New Harmony is 6 days away at normal warp. In our current condition, just get us there, Lieutenant. The ship jumped to warp with a shudder that ran through every deck. Almost immediately, new alarms began blaring. The warp field was unstable, fluctuating wildly as the damaged ship struggled to maintain faster-than-light travel. Warp core breach in 30 minutes, Choi reported. I can try to stabilize it, but I'll need to shut down power to non-essential systems. Define non-essential, Lee said. Everything except life support for the Villani and basic propulsion. That means no artificial gravity, no heating, no lights except emergency power. Lee looked around his bridge crew. They were exhausted, having worked for over 20 hours straight. Now he was asking them to live in freezing darkness while keeping 2.3 million aliens alive. Do it, he said. The lights went out. Emergency illumination cast red shadows across the bridge as the artificial gravity failed. Lee felt his stomach lurch as he began to float. Around him, his crew grabbed onto their consoles to stay in place. Warp field stabilized, Choi reported. But we're only managing warp factor 2. At this speed, it'll take us 12 days to reach New Harmony. The Villani networks won't last 12 days, Dr. Park So-min said. They need more power than we can provide long-term. Lee closed his eyes. They had saved everyone, but they were still going to lose them all. The ship wasn't big enough, fast enough, or strong enough to finish the job. Captain, Dr. Nam said softly. There's something else. The crew is starting to show signs of exhaustion poisoning. We've been running on adrenaline and stimulants for too long. People are going to start collapsing soon. How long do we have? Maybe 6 hours before the first person drops. 12 hours before we lose half the crew. Lee looked around the darkened bridge. His people had given everything they had and more. They had performed miracles just to get this far. But miracles had limits and they were rapidly approaching theirs. Sir, Ensign Yoon Tae-young spoke up from his communication station. The observer ships are still following us. They're maintaining a safe distance, but they're monitoring our condition. Any offers of help? Not officially. But Dr. Veltar of the consortium has been transmitting medical research data. That's actually advice on treating exhaustion poisoning. Lee almost smiled. The alien races were still playing their political games, helping without admitting they were helping. It was better than nothing, but it wasn't enough. Captain, Communications Officer Shin Hae-jin said, I'm receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Zekhai of the Zephyrian Empire. Put him through. The Zephyrian Admiral appeared on the screen, his compound eyes reflecting the red emergency lighting. Captain Lee, our sensors indicate your ship is in critical condition. We estimate complete system failure within 6 hours. Your point, Admiral. We have prepared rescue ships to evacuate your crew when your vessel becomes uninhabitable. You have attempted something impossible and failed as we predicted. There is no shame in accepting rescue now. Lee felt anger burn in his chest. What about the Villani? Regrettable but inevitable. Your ship cannot carry 2.3 million beings to safety. It was never possible. Then we'll make it possible, Lee said. Captain, be reasonable. You've done more than anyone expected. Save your crew, and accept that some things cannot be changed. Lee looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew floating in the dim red light. They were exhausted, pushed beyond their limits, but he saw no surrender in their eyes. Admiral, Lee said slowly, 70 years ago, my grandfather was trapped in a mine collapse on Mars. The rescue team said it was impossible to reach him. The tunnel was too unstable, the equipment too dangerous to use. Everyone told my grandmother to accept that some things couldn't be changed. What happened? The Admiral asked, though he sounded like he already knew. She got a mining laser and started digging herself. Took her 18 hours working alone to reach him. The rescue experts said she was crazy, that she'd bring the whole mine down on both of them. But she didn't stop. Lee paused. Humans don't accept impossible, Admiral. We just haven't figured out how to do it yet. The transmission ended. Lee turned to his crew. All right, people. We have 12 days to travel and 6 hours before we start dropping from exhaustion. We need solutions. Dr. Park looked up from her console. Captain, I've been studying the Villani hibernation networks. They're more efficient when they're connected to each other. If we could link all 230 networks together. One massive network instead of separate groups? Lee asked. Exactly. It would reduce the power requirements by about 30%. But it would also mean that if one network fails, they all fail. Lee considered this. It was risky, but they needed every advantage they could get. Do it, he decided. For the next several hours, the crew worked in the cold darkness of the ship, connecting the Villani hibernation networks into one vast interconnected system. It was delicate work, requiring precise harmonic calibrations and careful power distribution. As they worked, more crew members began to collapse from exhaustion. Dr. Nam did what she could, but she was running out of stimulants and medical supplies. The ship itself continued to deteriorate with new system failures every hour. Network integration complete, Dr. Park reported. Power consumption is down 35%. That buys us maybe another day. Still not enough, Choi said. We need 4 more days just to reach the nearest system. Lee floated in the darkness, thinking. There had to be something they were missing, some solution they hadn't considered. Captain, Shin said suddenly, I'm receiving a transmission. It's strange. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was human, but speaking in perfect Villani harmonic frequencies. It was beautiful and impossible. This is Governor Bae Jung-min of New Harmony Colony. We received word of your rescue mission from the observer ships. We're coming to meet you. Lee blinked in surprise. Governor, that's not possible. New Harmony doesn't have ships capable of deep space travel. We do now, the voice replied, still singing in Villani harmonics. We've been working with refugee Villani who escaped earlier solar storms. Together we've built something new, something impossible. On the main screen, a ship appeared that Lee had never seen before. It looked like human engineering and Villani crystal technology had grown together into something completely new. The ship moved with grace and purpose, its crystal hull glowing with inner light. We're here to escort you home, Captain, Governor Bae said, and we're bringing enough power cells and medical supplies to keep everyone alive until we get there. Lee felt tears in his eyes as he watched the impossible ship approach. Somehow, against all odds, help had arrived. How? He asked. Because you showed us that impossible just means no one has figured out how to do it yet. The governor replied. Welcome to the future, Captain. Let's bring our people home. 3 days later, the indomitable Spirit limped into orbit around New Harmony. Captain Lee Dae-ho barely recognized his ship. What had started as a sleek military vessel now looked like a patchwork of human metal and alien crystal, held together by determination and hope. The hull was cracked in a dozen places. The superstructure twisted from stresses no ship was meant to endure. But they had made it. All of them. Beginning orbital descent, Lieutenant Kim Hyun-woo reported from his damaged console. The navigation systems had failed completely 2 days ago, forcing him to pilot the ship manually with the help of Governor Bae's escort vessels. Lee watched the planet grow larger on the main screen. New Harmony was a beautiful world, covered in green continents and blue oceans. It had been settled by humans 50 years ago, but it was big enough to hold many more people. Big enough for 2.3 million refugees who had nowhere else to go. Sir, Communications Officer Shin Hye-jin said, I'm receiving transmissions from the surface, thousands of them. Put them through, Lee said. The bridge filled with voices, human voices speaking Korean, English, Spanish, dozens of languages, but mixed in with the human words was something else. Villani harmonic frequencies, crystal songs of welcome and hope. They're singing together, Dr. Park So-min said in wonder. Humans and Villani, creating music I've never heard before. Lee smiled. During the 3-day journey to New Harmony, word of the rescue had spread across the galaxy. The impossible mission had become the most closely watched event in recent history. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds had followed their progress, waiting to see if the humans could actually pull off their insane plan. They had done more than that. They had changed everything. Captain, Dr. Nam Ji-won reported, The Volani hibernation networks are stable and ready for revival. We can begin waking them up as soon as we reach the surface. How are they? Lee asked. Better than they should be. The network effect you suggested actually strengthened them. They're not just alive. They're healthier than when we picked them up. Chief Engineer Choi Min-ho looked up from his jury-rigged systems. Sir, once we land, this ship is never flying again. We've pushed her past every safety limit, but she got the job done. Lee nodded. The indomitable spirit had given everything, just like her crew. She deserved a peaceful retirement. Incoming transmission from the surface, Shin reported. It's Governor Bay. The main screen showed a middle-aged Korean man standing in what looked like a landing field. Behind him, Lee could see the impossible sight of humans and Volani working together, preparing facilities for the incoming refugees. Captain Lee, Governor Bay said, welcome to New Harmony. We're ready to receive our new residents. Governor, how did you manage to integrate Volani refugees so quickly? Bay smiled. It turns out that when you save someone's life, they're very motivated to help you in return. The Volani who escaped the earlier solar storms have been sharing their technology with us. Together, we've built something amazing. Lee could see it in the background of the transmission, buildings that looked like they had grown rather than being constructed, their crystal walls glowing with soft light. Humans and Volani moved through the structures together, their two technologies blending into something new and beautiful. Captain, Ensign Yoon Tae-young called out. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple ships entering the system. Looks like half the galaxy is coming to watch the landing. Lee wasn't surprised. Word had spread that the humans had actually done it, saved every single Volani against impossible odds. Ships from dozens of civilizations had been following their progress, officially as observers, but really to witness something unprecedented. The indomitable spirit touched down on New Harmony's surface with a grinding thud that shook the entire ship. For a moment, everything was silent. Then slowly, the sounds of celebration began to filter through the hull. Beginning revival procedures, Dr. Park announced. Lee made his way through the ship's twisted corridors to the first hibernation bay. The crew had worked for 3 days to prepare for this moment, setting up temporary medical stations and ensuring the revival process would go smoothly. The first Volani to wake was an elderly being whose crystal form glowed with warm golden light. As consciousness returned, the being's form stabilized and brightened. When it spoke, its voice was like singing crystal. We are alive? You're safe, Lee said. All of you. Welcome to New Harmony. The Volani's form pulsed with emotion. You came for us. When no one else would come, humans came running. Over the next 6 hours, 2.3 million Volani awakened from hibernation. Each revival was like watching a crystal flower bloom. As they woke, they began to sing, not the desperate, haunting distress call that had brought the humans running, but songs of joy and gratitude that filled the ship with beautiful music. Lee walked through the ship, watching his crew help the Volani prepare to leave their temporary home. Everywhere he looked, he saw impossible friendships forming. Sergeant Oh Kyung-soo was teaching a group of young Volani military marching songs. Dr. Nam was discussing medicine with Volani healers who worked with harmonic frequencies instead of drugs. Even the gruff Chief Engineer Choi was showing Volani technicians how human and crystal technology had been merged throughout the ship. Captain, Dr. Park said, approaching with a Volani whose crystal form was particularly bright and complex. I'd like you to meet Elder Nalthera. She's been designated as the primary liaison between the Volani refugees and New Harmony's government. The Elder's form shimmered as she spoke. Captain Lee, I have learned your language during hibernation. The network effect allowed us to share knowledge instantly. I wanted to thank you in words you would understand. Elder, you don't need to thank us. We did what anyone would do. No, she said firmly. We sent our plea to dozens of civilizations, advanced races with massive fleets and incredible technology. They all had reasons why they could not help. Only humans came. Only humans said, we will save them all, and meant it. Lee felt uncomfortable with the praise. We're not heroes, Elder. We just did our job. Elder Nalthera's form pulsed with what Lee had learned was Volani laughter. Captain, do you know what we have learned from our network connection with each other during hibernation? We shared not just knowledge, but understanding. We know now why humans are different. Different how? Other races think in terms of limits. They calculate what is possible and accept what is not. Humans think in terms of solutions. When you encounter something impossible, You don't accept it. You figure out how to make it possible. Lee looked around the ship at his crew and their new alien friends. Maybe that's true. But we couldn't have done it alone. The other races helped even if they couldn't admit it officially. Yes, the Elder agreed. And that is the most wonderful thing of all. By showing what was possible, you inspired others to help. By refusing to accept limitations, you helped others overcome their own. Over the following weeks, as the Villani settled into their new homes on New Harmony, the full impact of the rescue became clear. The human-Villani partnership had created technological breakthroughs that revolutionized everything, from faster-than-light travel to planetary engineering. The crystal matrix storage systems developed during the rescue became standard equipment on ships throughout the galaxy, but more importantly, the rescue had changed how the galaxy thought about impossible situations. When the Zephyrian homeworld faced a plague 3 months later, they didn't just rely on their own medical research. They called for human doctors. When consortium colonies were threatened by asteroid impacts, they requested human engineers. When ancient ethereal archives were damaged by solar storms, they asked for human archivists who thought differently about preservation. Lee stood in his new office on New Harmony, looking out at a city that had grown beyond all recognition. Human architecture and Villani crystal growth had merged into something beautiful and unique. Children of both species played together in parks where the trees sang with harmonic frequencies. "Captain," Ensign Yoon said, entering the office. He wore the uniform of New Harmony's combined defense force now, but he still called Lee by his old rank. "There's a transmission for you. It's from the Galactic Council," Lee smiled. "Let me guess. They want to give us a medal for doing the impossible." "Actually, sir, they want to hire us. 3 different civilizations have situations they think are impossible to solve. They're offering to pay the Human-Villani Alliance to attempt the impossible." Lee laughed. "Tell them we'll take a look. But remind them that impossible just means no one has figured out how to do it yet." As Yoon left, Lee turned back to the window. In the distance, he could see the indomitable spirit in a place of honor in the city center. The ship would never fly again, but it had become a monument to something important. A reminder that when someone cries out to the stars for help, there should always be someone willing to come running. And now, thanks to the example they had set, there always would be. The universe had learned a simple truth. Impossible is just another word for a problem that hasn't been solved yet. And there were humans out there, working with their friends from a dozen different worlds, ready to solve any problem that came their way, no matter how impossible it seemed.